My name is Shakirat, and this is the story of how I fell in love with a bandit. It was a normal evening in my secondary school, Skoku Secondary School. We were having an extra lesson, and I couldn't wait to get home and leave the grasp of my chemistry teacher, Mrs. Shakirat, when suddenly I started hearing screams and gunshots from a distance. Immediately, I knew what it was. My teacher and peers were already looking through the window curiously, and some were already panicking and crying. I didn't know what to do, and my mind ran to the various advice I had heard. I sat on my chair, my heart beating fast as I considered my options. Should I run or should I stay? I knew I must not be captured because I knew my parents wouldn't pay any dime of a ransom for me, especially my dad, who wanted a male son but got 6 girls instead. My teacher, Mrs. Shakirat, tried to calm us down and told us to be quiet and hide under our tables. She told us to wait patiently for her as she went to find out where the shooters were located. She snuck out of the class, and after some minutes, the shooting and screaming got louder. We waited for a few minutes, which felt like hours, and she didn't still return. I knew what this meant, and I knew staying in the class was like we serving ourselves to the devourers on a platter of party jollof rice. I decided to run out of the class. I jumped out of the window, and my friends and classmates all looked at me scared to move. I ran very fast, moving like the wind, fast but quiet and precise, almost like I had experienced what was happening many times before. I hid in the side of the school toilet using the tall dry grasses to mask my movement. Soon I heard the screams of my classmates, mostly the girls screaming with some shots fired, and the noise went into silence, a long silence that made my legs shake. After a few minutes, all I heard was the strange silence. Only the crickets were bold enough to shout, and the sound, the wind buzzing like an unbothered passerby. Those were the only sounds I heard. Then suddenly I felt a cold tap on my neck. It didn't feel like a hand, it felt like a cold metal, and I knew without a doubt what was behind me. I turned around slowly and saw a young boy almost in my age range, pointing a gun at me. I was shaking with confirmation of a new reality I was about to enter, scared and panicking. I turned around and I looked into his eyes. My legs began to shake as I saw the mask. He looked young but wildly dangerous. He also looked confident, like he had done this 1,000 times. I begged him, pleading with him to leave me alone. I explained with rushing words my family conditions to him, and after my tears and begging, he seemed to quietly understand me, slightly changing expressions with empathy. He lowered his weapon slowly and looked at me, telling me to stay calm with his hand. Suddenly, someone called for him from a distance behind, and he turned back to communicate with the other person. I knew this was an opportunity to do something to rescue myself because I couldn't trust a bandit with my begging and didn't trust that he would not take me. While in his distraction, I could do something. I looked at the gun in his hands and quickly tried to snatch it from his hand. As my hands touched it, he turned around with a speed I couldn't react to and landed a hard punch on my mouth, and I fell asleep. I soon woke up and I was in a truck. There I saw my female teacher, Mrs. Shakirat, and my other female peers all crouched together and crying. The bandits were ready to go and were gathering themselves into the trucks. I looked at my peers and they looked at me with terror and tears running down their cheeks. They drove us into the jungle, and all we could do was watch as we moved into the forest. While in the car, the guy who hit my face kept looking at me angrily, and I tried to look away from him. When we arrived at their camp inside the jungle, they put us in the middle of the place and their leader came out to speak to us. He spoke loud and clear and told us we were there to be wives and give his men pleasure, and anyone who tries to escape or murder their husband will be killed. He reminded us every that anyone who tried to escape would be burnt alive and showed us the skeletons to prove his point. We saw some women there who looked like they had given up on freedom and were living normal lives, some with babies and some with blank, emotionless faces. He told us his men would pick us the next day according to their ranks and ordered we should be fed. The men gave everyone food, but I was still tied up. The young guy who captured me collected the food meant for me and ate it right in front of me. I didn't care about the food he ate, but I was more scared about making an enemy in the camp of enemies. That night, while I was resting on a tree with my hands still tied, I was thinking of how my parents would react on hearing the information of my kidnap. The young guy who punched me in the mouth walked up to me with a towel and warm water in his hands. He knelt in front of me and put the towel in the water and placed it on my lip to clean my bruised lips. I remained still until he was done cleaning. Then he brought out bread and tea and started mixing. He looked at me and said in clear English, "If you tried what you tried in your school, in this place you would be put to death in a very painful way." And I believed him. I simply nodded slightly and he cut the bread and started feeding me with tea. Soon, one of the men from the bandits, a huge man, started looking at him and me while kissing his teeth and calling others to look at us. When he realized his other mates were looking at us, he turned to me and cut the rope loose. My hands were free and he stayed and watched me until I finished the food. He went back to his room in the camp and I moved towards my mates and my teacher all gathered in the middle of the camp. I tried to talk to them and ask questions, but they all looked unmotivated and dejected. I asked what happened to the men and boys of the school and they said they beat them up and let them go. I sat silently with them and we all slept there in the middle of the camp floor. The next day came by God's grace. The day the men would pick each of us to be their wives, and as they walked past us, they watched us like wild, hungry animals. I saw the way some of them looked at us in our uniforms like hungry beasts who would tear our uniforms and devour us in seconds. I saw a very huge man with dirty beards and scars looking at me and smiling. I tried to look away from him, but he made sure I knew he was looking at me. Soon the leader assembled the men based on their ranks. I looked around to see someone with a gentle expression or the young guy who hit me on my face, but when my eyes fell on him, I discovered he was ranks way lower than the bearded, terrifying looking man. My heart started to beat and I started shaking. They started picking, each man leading his young wife of choice towards his tents and tin shack. I watched my friends get dragged away and I could hardly pity them because I knew my turn was coming. It reached the turn of the bearded man and he glanced at me, his eyes briefly going through others but still coming to rest on me. He pointed at me but I refused to move, trembling on my knees. The girl next to me, Aishat, stood up, thinking she was the one he pointed to. As she walked towards him, he shouted, saying it was I he wanted, but the chief leader didn't allow room for replacement, and he took Aishat away angrily. It felt like a heavy load was lifted off my chest, though I was still scared of who I would end with. Soon it got to the guy who fed me bread and tea, and like I expected, he picked me. We headed into his tent, and it was the typical things I expected to find: a mat on the floor, a local stool, some bags, and a lantern. I sat there patiently, but he simply walked out, and a few minutes later brought me food. I was subconsciously planning my escape. Even though I knew nothing about the environment, I remained calm in the tent. That night when he returned back into the tent, he told me he knew I wanted to escape because everyone who was brought there wanted to, and he said it would take a lot of blood for me to escape. He also said he wouldn't touch me, but only if I wanted to, and I nodded in understanding. Days turned into a week, and a week became 3 weeks, and I began to wonder if we were ever going to get rescued. Everywhere I moved in the camp, it felt like eyes were watching me. Even going out at night was more terrifying than staying indoors because of the dangerous traps and animals whispered about in the camp. My peers were already giving up on the idea of leaving their new habitat anytime soon, but my will to escape wasn't broken. After a month, I got closer with my bandit husband, whose name was Karim, and got to know about all the other bandits in the camp. I knew the times they would go on raids and the time they would return. I knew who commanded who and a glimpse of how they operated, and I started making my plan. I knew I would need an AK-47 for safety and protection and a roadmap idea for my escape, but I knew it wouldn't be that easy. I was able to lay my hands on an idle AK-47 during my frequent visits to the bandits and was able to hide it safely without detection. The next resource I needed was the roadmap or road idea. I playfully asked my bandit husband, Karim, on many occasions if I could follow them on raids, but he always said the chief would never allow it. After a month, in the camp, I had known the ins and outs of the camp system and discovered weaknesses and resources I could use. Some of the bandits took hard substances before raids, but the chief leader of the camp was clean. Before any raid, he prays for them and he was considered the pure and good one as their head. I got close to the wives, who cooked his meals, and started coming up with my brilliant plan to escape. When the bandits were preparing for a raid, I would sneak a hard substance into the chief's food, and when the chief begins to distract everyone, I would escape and hope for the best. That was my brilliant idea, and I knew, deep down, it would work. All this while, my bandit husband never touched me, even while some of my peers were already looking pregnant. All I knew was I had to wait for the right opportunity and take it. Then the day I always prayed for came. That day, they had not prepared the chief's food early, and because of my closeness to the women at his kitchen and his wives, they gave me an opportunity to help them in the kitchen. After they were done, miraculously they told me to carry the food into his tent. This was the opportunity I had continued and always prayed for, and it was simply handed to me. The bandits were planning a raid that evening, and the majority of them were already gathered. I put the hard substance in his food and served it to him hot and nice. It would take 1 more hour before the bandits assembled, so I knew I needed to improvise and make things move quickly. I waited for when he was done eating. Then I went to inform the whole bandit assembly that one of the chief's wives had been caught cheating with another man. They all ran angrily towards the chief's tent, telling the chief to bring out his sinful adulterous wife, and the chief came out confused and asked what was going on. As the panic and confusion continued, that was when the substance started to work and hit the chief hard. The chief started blabbing out nonsense words out of his mouth and asked that the wife who was caught to be brought out. And his men asked him which of his wives it was, and it was there that the real commotion started. I took the opportunity when everyone was distracted and dug out the AK-47 I had hid and shoes I had got in and headed into the bushes. I ran very fast through the bushes, knowing that my path would lead me somewhere eventually, but within minutes I discovered someone was chasing and following me from behind. I ran with all my strength, but the person kept getting closer. I knew if I was caught escaping, my mode of transmission to heaven wouldn't be good, and the thought of that kept me going. After a much covered distance, I got exhausted. I hid under some bushes and discovered it was my bandit husband Karim who was chasing. I tried to calm myself, but as I saw from a distance the mob of bandits coming afar off, I got up and started running. Karim saw me and he chased me with intense speed and caught up with me. I pointed the gun at him and he smiled and told me it was a sin for a wife to kill her husband. Soon the other men started shooting at us. Karim signaled to them to stop, but they didn't. Almost like they wanted the both of us dead. He brought out his gun and started firing back at them, and I joined him. We hit multiple targets and we started running away together. As we ran, he told me we only had 2 options. It was either we escaped or we died. No other way around. We ran with so much energy and soon got to the main road. We ran very fast, and luckily a bus was coming our opposite direction and we stopped it and entered the bus. We told the driver to keep driving at full speed, which he did, and soon we were far away from the camp. As we got far in the journey, the driver told us we were soon going to arrive at a soldier checkpoint, and if they saw Karim, he would be killed, and they would probably kill the 3 of us too. We drove to a clothing boutique where we stopped. Karim held the driver and the boutique owner at gunpoint as I went to quickly help him pick clothes. We headed back into the bus and passed the soldier checkpoint safely. Then we arrived at Imo State. He told the driver to drive to a secluded area where we both got off and ordered the bus driver drive away. Karim stood and watched me, then smiled at me and told me I had just helped him accomplish his mother's dream, the freedom he had always wanted. He told me his story how he had been born in the camp and his mother had been killed when she tried to escape with him at 11 years old. He told me from the first time he saw me, I reminded him of his mother, and he thanked me. We promised to go our separate ways, and I headed to the police station and told everything to them. I was taken under government care and supervision and never saw my temporary bandit husband Karim again. After 15 years, when I was at a fueling station at Benin City, I saw a familiar face of a man looking at me. He looked very familiar, and as he walked towards me, he smiled and said with a voice that brought back memories, "Is that my uniform wife?" And there I fell in love with the man my bandit husband Karim had become.